You're standing in front of someone you just met. Maybe it's a colleague's partner, a new boss, or a friend of a friend at a crowded dinner table. You smile. You say something. And the moment the words leave your mouth, you can feel it, that invisible shift in the air. Their expression changes just slightly. The conversation carries on, but something is different now. You replay what you said for the rest of the night, trying to figure out exactly where it went wrong. But here's the thing. It wasn't rudeness. It wasn't carelessness. What happened to you in that moment is one of the most deeply wired, ancient, and unavoidable glitches in the human social brain. And once you understand why it happens, you'll never look at first impressions the same way again. Your brain is not built to meet new people smoothly. It is built to survive them. Think about that for a second. Every time you encounter a stranger, your nervous system runs an instant threat assessment that predates language by millions of years. Before your prefrontal cortex, the rational, polite, socially aware part of your brain has time to weigh its words. A much older structure has already fired. It has already scanned, categorized, and reacted. And sometimes, what comes out of your mouth in those first 30 seconds is less you and more the output of a biological system that evolved to judge fast and talk later. Psychologist Nalini Ambady spent decades studying what she called thin slices of human behavior, the tiny windows of interaction, sometimes just a few seconds long, from which people form sweeping judgments. Her research showed that humans make stable, lasting impressions of other people within the first 2 seconds of meeting them. 2 seconds. Before you've said your name, before you've shaken a hand, the mind is already building a complete file on this new person, and simultaneously, it is frantically trying to figure out what this new person is thinking about you. That dual pressure is where things start to go wrong. When you meet someone new, your brain is running 2 parallel processes simultaneously. One is social navigation, figuring out how to present yourself, what to say, how to come across. The other is threat detection, scanning the stranger for signals of status, dominance, warmth, or hostility. These 2 systems do not coordinate neatly. They compete. And because your cognitive bandwidth is suddenly stretched between them, something called verbal leakage becomes far more likely. Verbal leakage is exactly what it sounds like. When the mind is overloaded, the filter between thought and speech gets thin. The things you are consciously not going to say, the observation that feels risky, the comparison that might land wrong, the joke that requires too much shared context, start slipping through. Not because you're careless, because you're cognitively overwhelmed, and the brain under pressure defaults to speed over precision. Dr. Roy Baumeister at Florida State University has documented something he calls ego depletion, the idea that self-control draws from a limited mental resource, and once that resource is taxed, lapses happen. First meetings are among the most self-control intensive experiences in everyday life. You're managing your posture, your eye contact, your tone of voice, your word choice, and your listening, all at the same time. By the time you open your mouth to say something, that reservoir is already running low. The unfiltered thought gets through. And here is the counterintuitive part. The people who try hardest to make a good first impression are often the ones most likely to make exactly this kind of mistake. Effort, in social performance, is a paradox. The more consciously you try to monitor every word, the more mental resources get pulled into that monitoring, and the fewer are left over for actual execution. It is the same reason that a professional athlete who overthinks a routine movement suddenly can't perform it. Psychologists call this paralysis by analysis. In social settings, it shows up as the forced laugh at the wrong moment, the compliment that sounds backhanded, the question that lands as invasive when you meant it as curious. But there's something even deeper going on. Something older. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, known for his work on social group sizes and the evolution of the human brain, has argued that the neocortex, the large outer layer of the human brain that handles complex thought, grew specifically to manage social complexity. Not to hunt, not to build tools, to navigate relationships. The human brain is, at its core, a social prediction machine. It is constantly running simulations of other people's mental states, guessing what they think, what they feel, and crucially, what they think of you. When you meet someone new, that prediction machine is working in the dark. It has no prior data on this person, no history, no baseline. So it does the most rational thing a brain can do with no information. It fills the gaps with assumptions. And many of those assumptions are pulled from your existing mental models, the patterns you've built from every previous relationship, every past interaction, every social situation you've ever navigated. This is the moment the accidental insult is born. You assume this new person shares your reference points. You assume they hold the same casual attitudes about the things you're casually referencing. You assume the shorthand that works with your oldest friends translates into a context-free encounter with a stranger. It doesn't. The comment that would land as warm teasing with someone who knows your full character reads as dismissive or condescending to someone who has only 2 seconds of data on you. The observation that signals intelligence in your regular social circle reads as arrogant to someone who hasn't yet earned the context to decode it charitably. Your brain projected. It always does. And the projection misfired. There is a term for this in social psychology, the false consensus effect, named and studied by Lee Ross at Stanford University in the 1970s. Ross showed that people consistently overestimate the degree to which others share their beliefs, attitudes, and reactions. The effect is strongest with strangers, because strangers offer no corrective feedback yet. You haven't learned where they differ from you. So your brain treats them as a mirror, and the insult that lands is the moment the mirror reveals it was never there. What makes this especially disorienting is the timing. It doesn't happen at the moment of maximum stress. It happens right after it. You've done the initial awkward hello. The small talk is rolling. Your guard comes down just slightly because the first few moments went fine. And in that exact moment of partial relaxation, when your monitoring loosens just enough, the unscreened thought surfaces. The observation that was waiting behind the filter steps forward and speaks. Psychologists call this ironic process theory, after the work of Daniel Wegner at Harvard. Wegner showed that the harder you try to suppress a specific thought, the more cognitively active that thought becomes. If you tell yourself, don't mention their job, it might be sensitive. Your brain flags that topic, monitors it, and paradoxically keeps it in the foreground of your attention until the suppression effort weakens for even a moment and out it comes. The very act of trying not to say something increases the probability that you'll say it, so you're not clumsy, you're not thoughtless. You are running ancient hardware in a modern social environment, with too many simultaneous demands on a system that was never designed for formal first impressions at dinner parties. Here is the strange comfort in all of this. Research consistently shows that the people who accidentally say the wrong thing in the first few minutes of meeting someone are, on average, rated as more likable in the long run, not less. The polished, perfectly calibrated person who says exactly the right thing every time reads as managed, controlled, slightly unreal. The person who stumbles, who blurts something awkward, who visibly cringes and recovers, that person reads as human, warm, safe. A 2012 study by researchers at the University of Texas found that people who express minor social blunders in first encounters were rated more attractive and approachable than those who projected flawless competence. The researchers called it the pratfall effect, a term borrowed from earlier work by psychologist Elliot Aronson in the 1960s, who discovered that even highly competent people became more likable when they made small, visible mistakes. Perfection creates distance. Imperfection creates connection. Your brain doesn't know this, of course. In the moment, the cringe is real. The replay is relentless. The internal audit of every word you said runs for hours afterward. That, too, is evolutionary. The post-mortem social review that your ancestors used to update their mental models, to learn faster, to navigate their tribe more effectively next time. But here's what that review never accounts for. The other person is almost certainly running the exact same program. They are replaying the conversation. They are wondering what you thought of something they said. They are hoping the moment that felt slightly off to them didn't register to you. They are, in short, a human brain doing what human brains do, constructing social reality out of incomplete data, making constant errors of inference, and hoping the relationship survives them. The next time you're standing in front of someone you just met, the filter is already stretching thin. The prediction machine is already filling gaps with assumptions. The suppressed thought is already growing louder. And when the words come out slightly wrong, slightly too soon, slightly too familiar for the context, that is not a failure of character. That is the sound of a brain that evolved to belong, trying desperately to figure out if it does,